Hi, everyone. I'm really excited to be here. This is my first time speaking at AxCon, long-time lurker, first-time speaker. Um, my pronouns are she, her. I am a producer at CBC Kids. If you're not familiar with CBC, if you're not Canadian, CBC is the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. We are Canada's national public broadcaster. So we're kind of like ABC in Australia or BBC in Britain. So a couple of things I'll get out of the way. I am a white female. I have short red hair with a white skunk stripe in the front, and I wear cat's eye glasses that are black with a little bit of white sparkle trim on them. A couple of things that are a little bit interesting about me. I've got two cats. I love sushi, and I'm a left-handed axe thrower, which is interesting, I think. I'm presenting to you virtually from Toronto, Ontario, Canada. The city resides on land that is traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. And I come with respect for this. So we're going to be talking a lot about kids on the internet. I produce primarily CBC Kids and CBC Kids Olympics every 2 years, except for Tokyo, which was an anomaly. We're going to be talking about how kids' websites fun and accessible. Now, as a producer, I'm not coming from the coding aspect of putting together websites. We do have our office, and they do a fantastic job of making our websites accessible. As a producer, just to explain my role, I come from the content side of things. So I do produce graphics and things like that, and I work on the storytelling and the wordsmithing and the readability. So this is what I'm going to be talking about.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for your patience. We're working out a few technical issues. We should have Olena back here pretty soon. Please bear with us. Hi, everybody. Thanks again for your patience. We're able to get Olena back. I will not take up any more time. She's going to still use what she has available here to get through the slides. So take it away, Olena. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Sorry about that. A little bit of a power issue there for a minute. I'm back. So I will try to get through this as fast as possible so we don't go over time. So when we talk about kids being on the internet, we talk about 3 different age groups, 3 to 5, 6 to 8, and 9 to 12. And the reason we talk about these different age groups is different age groups have different motor skills, and they prefer to go on the internet in different ways. So if you're talking about the lower age range, their motor skills aren't going to be very developed, and they prefer to use touch screens. They use iPads. Their parents give them an iPad and just go, hey, play, and they can just click on an icon. Whereas if you go to the older age range, like the 9 to 12, they have very developed motor skills, and they can use laptops, touch screens. They know how to use a mouse and a trackpad, and they have good coordination skills. So when you're thinking about designing for children, you can't really design all the way from 3 to 12 because it's going to be complicated to try to design for very young children who can't use keyboards, and also keep children who are 9 to 12 engaged, who are able to use keyboards and do complex things on the internet. So you really either need to pick one of these groups or at the most 2 of these groups. So how many kids are online? It's really hard to track because of privacy. You can't do cookies with children. So what we wind up doing is we have a company called Media Technology Monitor, and what they do is they contact parents at homes and get them to do surveys. So we have information about 2,500 children and parents contacted in Canada, and the best we could get from that was that 69% of kids have a computer for children 2 to 11 that they use at home. 73% of kids have a tablet, and 44% of kids have a cell phone. So tablet is pretty high and computer is pretty high, but cell phone use isn't quite as high as you might think among children. So this is also something to consider when you're designing for kids, even though everybody's like, mobile first when you're designing. You have to keep in mind that not all the kids will be accessing your website on mobile. So there's additional barriers for kids when they go online, one of them being dyslexia as well. Another seminar I went to, they were saying that 1% of the world is autistic based on a WHO report from 2021. So I did quick math, and that's about 77 million people in the world. We don't know how many of those are children, but people with dyslexia started off as children with dyslexia. And this is something that we really have to deal with when you're putting together, designing a website, and you're thinking about fonts and things like that and readability. Language as well. Young readers are still learning to spell, and a lot of them have English as a second language. So that's something to consider as an additional barrier for kids getting online. Another thing is inequality. So you have issues like internet access and broadband and digital literacy. When we look at a place like Canada, we have a lot of children who are in Northern Canada who might be in Northwest Territories or Nunavut, or you even have kids who are going to be in rural areas where the broadband isn't that great. They can't handle heavy animations on a page because it's going to take forever for it to load. So these are also things to consider if you want to reach all kids everywhere. The other thing, and this was something that became very, very big in the last 2 years, is e-learning. So for the last 2 years, kids were all online and doing all their learning there. So for us, as a website for kids that has a blog and has a lot of educational content on it, we suddenly were getting a lot of traffic from teachers using our content as learning tools, as homework help, or incorporating it into their daily classroom activity. So it had to definitely be accessible if it was going to be used in the classroom. So there's some best practices. There's 3 basic rules for designing for kids. And these are very, very basic rules. One is that it has to be easy. So kids need to know what buttons mean, what the language is appropriate for children, things like that. So it needs to be easy for them to understand. It also has to be simple. So simple to use basically means that kids can find what they want easily. They don't get frustrated because they're constantly clicking everywhere and they're not getting to what they need. You know, if they need something for homework, we don't want them clicking around for 10 minutes trying to find what it is that they need for their homework help, and they get frustrated and leave and go to another website. And it also has to be fun, right? It needs to look fun, color wise, image wise, because if it's just easy and simple, but it's not fun, they're not going to want to stay. If it's fun and simple, that's great. But if it's not easy to understand, they're not going to be able to read it. So you kind of have to have all three of these in order for kids to really want to stick around. So one of the things that we think about is icons. So kids are really literal. So since they respond to images and icons, you need to think about how kids will perceive them. So using icons is great, but think about the meaning that the kids will understand at their age group. So don't assume that an icon is universal. You know, kids may not be aware of it yet if they're only visiting other children's websites. Things that an adult might think of as an icon being, yeah, that's exactly what I think of when I think of this word or this type of link. Kids may not be familiar with the same concept. And also think about cultural associations. You know, I've heard that in other presentations today and yesterday about cultural associations with icons. Also, make sure to include text descriptions with your icon. Don't just rely on the image, because not every child will understand the image. They may just be learning what it means. So for example, these types of icons, which I took from a couple of other children's websites, these are navigational icons. So like the cat with the little hat over it, and an image of a little television, and an image of a pizza with a slice coming out of it. And when you look at these, what exactly do you think these icons would mean if you came across them on a children's website? Where do you think these would take you? So the first one could be games. What kind of games might they be? The second one obviously is going to some type of show or schedule maybe, or videos. And the third one, which I found a little bit complicated, could it be recipes, or maybe it could be food because it's a pizza? And in reality, these three, what they actually go to, the first one is rhyming games, which I guess when you think about it, it's a cat in a hat. So it's a rhyming game. That makes sense once you see the word next to it, but it could have been animal games. It could have been storytelling games. I would have probably picked animals. The second one is videos. It could have been any of those three: videos, or watched live, or a show schedule, which a lot of broadcasters have on their site. And the last one was the most complicated for me, because I never would have thought of it as being an icon for sharing. But I guess an icon of a pizza with a slice coming out of it could make sense for sharing. You're sharing the pizza. But we're so used to share as something else that I don't know if that one was necessarily the right icon to have for that. Another thing is fonts. So readability for children is really important, and what an adult can read and what a child can read are two very different things. You can't really have something that's like the New York Times website for a child. It's just not going to be easy for them to read. They're going to have a lot of things that they need to deal with. They're just learning to read. So we need to make it as easy for them as possible during this stage of their life. So normally 14 points minimum for readability, but for our site, we use 18. It really depends on the X height of your font, obviously, and the design of your font. But 18 is, we found to be the most comfortable size for children. Our site is dealing with ages 6 to 10, and we know that the kids who are reading are really in the 8 to 10 range, because the 6-year-olds really can't read very much at this point. So 18 points really goes for 8 to 10. And when choosing a font for the basic text and navigation, there's some best practices to follow, which I'll get into on the next screen. When you're designing the specialized graphics, such as theme images and interactive elements, you can have a lot more fun with the fonts. So you can go a little bit more funky with whatever, fonts you choose. Like if you're doing a Halloween graphic, to choose a more spooky font for it, but you still need to keep in mind the best practices for legibility. So like color contrast, amount of text, obviously you're going to do alt text for these images, you would have to do that, but you can still have a little bit more fun with it. And sans serif fonts are always easier for children to read than serif fonts. As an adult, we're really good at reading serif, but for children, sans serif is what they learn to begin with. So what to look for in a text font. So there's a couple of things. Imposter letter shapes. And what I mean by that is if you look at the sample I've put up, the text that's in red is the one that is preferable. So the word illustrate is a good example of imposter letter shapes. If you look at a font like Arial and you look at the word illustrate, the capital I and the two L's look exactly alike. So if you're a child learning to read, you would have a hard time. Also, if you have dyslexia, you would have a hard time reading that word. Whereas a font like Trebuchet, just as an example that I grab, illustrate the L, lowercase L has a little bit of I call it a little tick at the bottom because it's not a serif font too much. It isn't, it's different enough from the capital I that you're able to tell that it's the word illustrate. Another thing is distinguishable reading shapes. So in the red example, Calibri is the one that you would want to use, whereas Comforta is the one that you don't want to use. Comforta, the O and the A are very, very close in letter shape. The A has a little bit of a descender on it, but it's so subtle that at a small type font, or if you have any kind of low vision, you wouldn't be able to see that descender. Even if you don't have low vision, if you're out in bright sunlight and you're reading it on a phone, or if it's very small, you won't be able to distinguish those two letters, and some words will be very hard to read. Whereas Calibri, because the A is a two-level A, it's very easy to tell the difference between the E, the O, and the A. Letter spacing is really important as well. Montserrat, if you look at the word savvy, the two V's come very close together that it almost looks like a W. So again, low vision, bright sunlight, anything like that, you're not going to be able to tell the difference. Whereas Calibri gives you a little bit of extra space and you can tell the difference. Simple shapes as well. Times New Roman is a complex shape, serif, and Century Gothic is a simple shape, so sans serif. Fun with color. So color everywhere. When you think of a kid's website, you think color. Kids love color. And it's true. Vivid and bright colors catch children's attention and they create a happy mood. You want kids to be happy on your website. Don't shy away from the use of primary colors, but as kids start hitting 10 and up, colors can get a bit more complex. You can start pulling away a bit from the primary color scheme. Popular color combos of things like muted pastels or monochromes that we like as adults should be left for sites that adults go to. Have fun and break the rules, but keep in mind that color contrast and color blindness as well. So for example, on this screen, this is the CBC Kids homepage, the site that I work on. So our color scheme is a primary color scheme. There's a lot of blue, there's some oranges, there's yellows, there's pink in there. The background though is white. It gives off a happy feeling, and we have a good color contrast on our navigation links, which is 5.19 to 1. We also have a good color contrast on our images as well. So whenever we try to put text on images, you know, I make sure that the other producers are checking the color contrast using the AIM contrast checker. And we also double check our images and our site with the Chrome plugin for color blindness. So it's easy enough to just go to the Chrome plugin and just set it to red, green, or yellow, blue, or even full color blindness, and see how the site looks. And I have a link in the resources at the end for the different Chrome plugins that we use that we find really, really helpful. Another example of a really good site is Nat Geo Kids. They also use a primary color scheme, which gives off a really happy feeling, like the green and the yellow and the blue. They have really great contrast as well. The only place that has a little bit less good contrast is if you look right underneath this video image of Awesome Animal Vets, there's a caption, and the white text on that pale yellow does not have proper color contrast and is a little bit hard to read. But they also address color blindness really well with their website. So when it comes to images, kids' websites are full of images because they are visual learners. So it helps and encourages the learning process in children. So using a lot of visuals helps those who have difficulty reading or understanding concepts. And the use of images of situations and objects and animals that are identifiable to kids really helps them a lot. And another thing that we make sure when we're putting together our content is to ensure that there's diversity in our images. So kids should be able to see themselves in our content. So we make sure to have gender parity. We try to make sure to have disability images, but that's not that easy, unfortunately, because we find that a lot of stock agency photos, it's extremely hard to find any images of children with any disabilities to be able to put them in context into our blog pieces so the kids can see themselves. But we do have other diversity and inclusion that we can get into those images. And of course, making the alt text descriptive so that the visuals are helpful for screen readers as well. And we try to check some of the pages every once in a while with a screen reader. So for example, we have a page here. It's a long list of 30 things that you can do when you're stuck inside. So every once in a while, we would break up the list by putting in an image. It's an illustrative image that we create in Canva, where we just kind of illustrate one of the pieces of one of the things that you can do while you're inside. So this was number 30. It's a staring contest. And for this one, we're able to show diversity in the image. It's an illustration of a young Black girl and another young girl sitting in a wheelchair, and they are staring at each other, doing a staring contest. So we're doing relatable images of our target age group and our target audience, and we're also duplicating text that is also then within the blog post. So we don't really have to go explaining the image. It's just more of a decorative image. In terms of fun with words, readability and inclusiveness. So in the 6 to 8 age group, kids are working on their reading and their word comprehension, especially those with learning disabilities such as dyslexia. So we also have kids who might be visiting where English isn't their first language. So these are a lot of considerations that we have to take into account. So we need to write to their grade level. So we write for grades 4 to 5 when it comes to blog content, because we know that these are the kids who can actually read a little bit better. We use readable.com. I don't know if anybody's used that website, but it's a great site where you can take your content. You could either copy it from a web page or from Google Docs or wherever, dump it into Readable, and it uses a lot of different algorithms to tell you what grade level your content is coming in at, and highlights things like long sentences, complex words, things like that. And grades your piece as to, how interesting it is, how long it takes to read, how many words there are. So you can sit there and you can edit it right within Readable. So we do things like break up the text into small chunks with headings that explain what the paragraph is about. So that helps kids who skim the content as well. We keep our sentences short, so about 8 to 10 words. And we stay away from jargon or slang that kids either, won't understand or it'll date the content when it goes out of style, in a week, because this kind of stuff really goes pretty fast. And we don't use an adult word when a simpler one will do. And we also spell everything out. So something like that you'll see on another website or an adult, a site catering to adults, where it'll be like this car goes 30 miles per hour, and it'll be written like M/HR. We would actually spell that all out. We would use kilometers, but it would be 30 miles per hour. So 3 words, because kids are still learning these words. They may not know the short form. I'm going through this nice and fast. So the last part of this, which is actually a huge part, especially for kids. And really this section could be a whole different talk. When we talk about widgets, we're talking about interactive pieces. This could include video games. This could include quizzes and polls. It could be videos. It could be anything that's interactive. And with kids especially, this is pretty much their favorite part of a website. For our website, the biggest part of our website is video games. Kids come to the video games section more than they go to any other part of the website. We do get a lot of traffic to the blogs, and we do know that section of the website is being used mostly by gatekeepers, teachers and parents who are bringing their kids there for homework and lessons. But we know that the game section is being visited strictly, like 100% kids are going to that part of the website. We see this in our user testing all the time. They will go there, they will find their favorite game, and they love it. So we still have best practices that we need to have when it comes to designing and writing widgets, interactives, and games. So some of the things to think about, and this is just like a very small list when it comes to the overall things that you need to think about. So kids type really, really slowly. So you have to account for this when you're doing widgets or games that have a time limit. It's really best to not have a time limit at all if you can avoid it. Just let them play. Let them take their time. Kids are also still learning to spell. So you have to account for this when requiring text input in a widget or a game. Also in your search, if you're going to have a search, don't assume that they know how to spell anything that they want to look for. Make sure that try to do a search that's a predictive search, or that sits there and tells them like, did you mean, or are you looking potentially maybe for this word instead? It's kind of like, it doesn't make them feel great if they're wrong. Like if they're looking for something and they spell it wrong, and then it tells them that there are no entries for that word. It's better to actually just give them options. And that way they also learn to spell. And they also have less mouse control. So anything that needs to be clicked on, tapped on, like a button, has to be larger than what you would design for an adult. And it shouldn't be too close to other action elements. So for example, and this will be the last thing, this is one of our games. So we have like a big green pause button that's really, really visible, and it's not next to anything else. So you can't make a mistake when you click the pause button. You won't accidentally click anything else. We also have a very long play duration on this hockey game. It's 56 minutes or longer, I think. So there's no way a kid's going to get frustrated because, oh my God, I only had a minute to score as many goals as I wanted to, and I couldn't get the mouse to move properly. The other thing is that target for this hockey game is really big. So, the objective of the game, as the goalie moves back and forth in front of the net, you move your target to where you want to hit, get your puck into the goal. And then as the meter flashes up and down from green to red, you click again and then you hit. That target is really nice and big. So you're not like shooting at a very small space. The only negative with this, of course, is that it's not keyboard compatible. It has to be either mouse or touch. So I've added some resources at the end. There's some articles from Nielsen Norman and Readability Group, and some web tools for like Readable and the contrast grid, and some Chrome plugins that we use that hopefully will be helpful for you. So I hope, and I did it in time, even with the delay. So if there's any questions, I would be really happy to answer them.
Great job, Olena. Thank you so much. We do have some questions. What is a better icon for save for the 3 to 30 age group to replace the floppy disk? Do you have any ideas on that?
I love that. I've heard that asked in other talks this week as well. So that is something, like myself being a middle-aged woman, the floppy disk is something that I associate with saving. So because we're dealing with an age group that is growing up never having seen a floppy disk in their life at all, definitely using a different icon for save is important, because they would never know to click on that ever to save something. I've seen a lot of instances where an icon for save was like the arrow down, like the download icon. So it's an arrow facing down with a little like half square underneath it. So like you're downloading it into a basket or into a file, like you see for if you're using Google Drive or something and you want to download something from Google Drive. So the idea of it goes down into your computer. I've seen that one used a lot. What we tend to do is when we have kids in our play testing, these are the type of questions we ask them in terms of like, when you're saving, what do you think of in terms of saving to your computer? We get a lot of different answers for that. A lot of kids just say like, I don't save anything because the only thing that they're doing online is playing games. That's what they do that's what they do at a website, is that they play games or they read. They don't save anything. Or when they're online, they go to YouTube and they don't save anything there. So this whole concept of saving online is also a little bit foreign for this age group as well. So it might not be something that they even have to deal with until they're getting into like high school and actually having to create content online and, save it, to print out or give to their teachers. So, but it's a good question. I don't have an answer for that.
I think that what you said makes sense to me too. With what you were talking about there, you mentioned talking to kids. That was another question that came up, is there a way that you get feedback from kids? So could you kind of describe that a little bit?
Yeah, so what we do is we do play testing. In our product development group organizes the play testing. And what they have is there's a couple of different ways to do it. There used to be like a parent council. I'm not sure if we have that anymore, that would volunteer. They would send emails out to them asking if, like we have a new round of play testing, would anybody be interested? And they would send in their information about their child and their age and, pertinent information. We also have reached out, I think, through Facebook. We have a Facebook page for CBC Kids, which is another, the other half of CBC Kids is CBC Parents. So we also reach out through CBC parents to parents. It has to go through the parent, and the parent will sign their child up. And usually our play testing is done in sections or on a specific topic. So we've done play testing when we've been redeveloping our site, which we're in the process of doing right now. So when a new section would go up, like say the game section, we would talk to parents and see how many kids we could get in to play test the new games section. And then we, like, since COVID, we've been doing virtual testing, but we have in the past done it within CBC in a specific room. We've also had classes come in and do play testing with an entire classroom to get their take on how they feel about, say, a new design or a new feature, or even like, what do you think of our games? Like, are they good? Do you want harder games or easier games? You know, things like that. But it's great to do the play testing, and it's usually only about 20 minutes, 25 minutes of play testing. That's about all the kids can focus on, really. But it's really important to do the play testing. What we've had a little bit less success with, and it's a little bit harder to do, is to do play testing with kids with disabilities. Because we don't really, there's no real organization that we've been able to find yet that we can contact to get kids with disabilities to do the testing. Right now, we get kids that are urban and rural and things like that, but we don't necessarily know if they have a disability or not. That's not really disclosed.
I'm going to address this question. Someone is asking if the whole presentation was covered today, or if they should check out the downloadable slides and they'd get any additional information. I think you covered everything, Olena, but is there anything that they'd gain?
Yeah, I pretty much covered everything. I just only went through it fast. But yeah, I pretty much covered everything. Probably will have to come back again and focus, specifically on, maybe probably video games for kids next time around, or, something else like closed captioning for children, which is very specific. But again, like I said, it's hard to cover everything in terms of putting a website together for children in 40 minutes, because there's just so much to it. And I mean, there's the whole design side as well, which could be covered by our art director. So
great. And we just have a few seconds left, so any questions we didn't get to, there was a few. Olena has her contact information on the screen. It is on LinkedIn, and she has an email address. It's her name, Olena Sullivan at cbc.ca. And so you can reach out to her with any of those questions, or you can also reach out to DQ and we can find out the answers for you. I want to thank everybody today for managing with us those technical difficulties. Olena, thank you for jumping back in with us and going through everything. It's been wonderful information. I hope everybody can attend more AXCON sessions, and until then, have a great day. Thank you.
thank you.